people from Nigeria, and we have some from India as well. Cool. Awesome. Do we have more people? Singapore,
US.
United States, yeah. All right. Great. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah. So we have people dialing from different time zones right now, and yeah, we'll try to make the best of your time, and see how we can make this session useful for you all. Yeah. So before we begin the session, some event guidelines. This session we are planning to record it because we have the limitation of 100 people for this call, and we would like to share all of our like knowledge and whatever we're sharing here with as many people as possible. So if you guys are okay with this, like it would be great if we can record this session. Secondly, we will be using Slido, like I said, for Q&A and chat for general commentary. So feel free to drop in any message in the Google chat during the call. Thirdly, please no hate speech or discriminating behavior, and we'll try to respect each other's opinion. If you want to share any of your questions or any comment you have, feel free to share that, but be mindful that you do not hurt the other person. Fourthly, we will be taking a group picture in the end. And lastly, if you want to share any of your key takeaways on social media, feel free to tag EDPList and the hashtag Amazing Together. Yeah. For our agenda today, so we had multiple things that we wanted to discuss, and it was very difficult for us to put this thing all in the event description. So here we have the agenda. So in this session, we will be talking about different things, starting from defining roles and responsibilities of product management in UX. Then we will go down to developing a seamless process between product management and UX, how product managers and UX designers can have an effective relationship in a real life scenario, challenges for product managers and UX designers, and tips and tricks of the trade to work collaboratively and achieve the best results. And in the end, we'll have the open floor for Q&A. So we'll take the Q&A from the Slido. Yeah, so feel free to drop in any questions, and we'll try to cover as many as possible. However, we'll be covering the questions according to the top voted questions. So that would be on our top priority, the ones which are the most voted. Yeah. All right. So let's get started. Wendy, for you right now, what do you think? What do you think like is the role of a product manager?
So from the role of the product manager, basically, I think the most important part is the product manager is actually the middle guy between the product team as well as the stakeholders. Somehow, I wouldn't say that it is the blocking point from the stakeholder to reach out directly to the product team. But I think it's a bridge for the product owner or the product managers in order to talk to the stakeholders into defining what actually their requirement is, as well as what actually the stakeholders want to achieve, for example. But from my point of view, the product manager is also important in order to define, first of all, the product goal and the product vision. So as I mentioned, the key role of the product owner is actually to maximize the value of the products to our users and our customers. So that's why the product owner has a very strong responsibility in order to define how far our products want to achieve and what we are going to achieve and why. So let's take the e-commerce website as an example at Decathlon Hong Kong. So basically, our e-commerce website is actually want to allow the sport practice user in order to find the products, the useful information in a one-stop website. So this is why we define as a product vision. And from time to time, we also have different product goal in order to achieve this product vision. For example, right now we are focusing on boosting the e-commerce business, while in the past we also want to drive more awareness of our e-commerce website. So that's why we work a lot on the content, on the enhancement on different features. So first of all, the key role of the product manager is to define better the product goal and the product vision. And somehow it's also involved the stakeholder management. And so to work with the product team, you also need to have a better, like the backlog prioritization. So in order to have the better prioritization, then the product team will know what we are going to do in the coming sprints or in the next sprints. So that's why I think these are the key roles for the product manager for now. And Hussein, what do you think about the UX designer? I think most of the attendees are the UX designers, so they might be interested more about your role.
Yeah, for sure. For me, as a role as a UX designer, it has to do with different things, and also, like we say it here, it's more like a sidekick to product manager. We try to make sure that everything is clear for the product manager whenever they're coming up with a requirement. So we try to validate that assumption with them. That validation can be done through different ways. It can be through user research. It can be through usability testing, and with different methods. So there are like several ways through which you can do that. And one other thing that I do as a UX designer is not just research, but also try to work along with like different key stakeholders. So that would be business people, understanding the business requirements, and then also collaboration with the engineering team or the developers team. That's another collaboration that we do. And also at the same time, we try to make sure that all the insights that we have gathered while doing the research, it is translated into a seamless solution, which can be easily be embedded as part of our bigger solution. So let's say we were talking about an e-commerce website or any other solution that is out there. How seamlessly can we embed that solution or that feature? That's the role of a UX designer as well. And we try to, like, after the product is designed, then we build it along with the engineering team. So in that part as well, like, your job does not end when you have just designed the product, but also how do you hand over that product to the other key stakeholders as well.
Yeah, for my
And yeah, I know that Wendy mentioned about scrumping. So there we have to also defend our solution. Like we need to back it by data, or like we need to
yeah.
share why did we come up with this solution. So you are more like defending your idea as well, but at the same time need to be open to different opinions as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so for my day-to-day job, I also do a lot of analysis in terms of data and the user behavior around the website. For example, I dive in to see different data on Google Analytics through different tools to measure the user behavior, like the heat map, the scroll depth, for example. So everything that we define, for example, the user needs is actually based on the data and based on a proof, so that we will know what kind of user needs that we have defined and what kind of problems that those users are actually facing. So, and then we will come up with a solution in order to resolve the problems that they are facing together with Hussein on this.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what we do in our role as product managers and UX designer. And Wendy, what do you think? How do we make the process seamless between you and me?
So I think to have a seamless process, I think the most important part is to define the playing field. So, for example, somehow we already have the kind of chemistry, so we will know what kind of things that we need to cater. For example, on my own, I mostly do the analysis, the requirement drafting, the requirement writing, for example, and somehow we also have some overlap field. For example, we will do workshops together, user interviews together in order to drive some user insights. And on my part, I think what I also mentioned, in order to have a seamless process, I think to define a product goal is also very important, because with the product goal, and somehow the whole team, like Hussein, and the engineers and developers actually knows what we are going to achieve as the biggest goal, and then we can basically initiate some more things around the goal. So the developers and Hussein can actually think outside of the box, like what about this user pain point? What about this solution? With the product goal, that can create more creativity among the team and for our UX designer. And Hussein, what do you think? Like for you and me, do we have
For
an effective process?
Yeah, for me, I think it's all about the communication. The way for me to make the process seamless is to be more collaborative, and I think for any relationship to be great, whether it be personal or professional, it has to be like it has to come down to communication. So it is very important for product manager and UX designer to be as communicative as possible. That involves like taking the UX designer from the very beginning of the process, involving them into different decisions, and I think we do that greatly here in our team as well. That we take on board our UX team and our engineering team, and try to give them a better view from the very beginning and hear out their opinion. I think that makes the process very seamless. At the same time, for me, I think that makes the process very efficient as well. So the efficiency comes when I have a clarity on where did we started and where do we want to go. So where if I know that how we started and what was the context behind it, then it will be easier for me to move forward as well. So in that way, I think the process becomes very seamless and very easy to implement, along with like not just product managers but also with other key stakeholders as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think apart from the communication, somehow it also ties back to the workflow. And for example, when we are discussing to analyze a problem, so that's is actually a phase of discovery. So somehow we will do the data analysis, we will do some workshop from the internal team and the external team. So we'll discover some idea or some hypothesis around the user needs or the user pain point. Then we will do a data validation and to see whether the hypothesis is actually valid or the idea is actually needs by the user. And then Hussein will also work on and then it falls into Hussein's scope in order to do the design on UX or UI. And after that, we will have a round of discussion among the internal team for the like the product team. And somehow we will then go to the technical implementation, and we will do the data and we will do the idea validation, like some A/B testing or multivariation testing. And at the end, we will do some measurements in order to see whether we are achieving our initial targets or how we can adapt the change to our design. So actually with this workflow, it also create a seamless process between UX designer and product management, because we know in which phase and which step we will be involved into the process. So I think for the UX designer or the product managers here, you can think of how to create this kind of workflow among your team, so that you can actually create a seamless process for each of the team members.
Yeah, for sure. And I think other than that, like we like the process is definitely like seamless, but at the same time, like on a day-to-day basis, we do face like some challenges as well, which makes it very difficult for us at times working with different key stakeholders. So, Wendy, for you, what kind of challenges do you think you face on a day-to-day basis?
Sorry, I can't catch your question. Can you repeat
Yeah,
again?
on a day-to-day basis, like what kind of challenges do you face as a product manager?
Um, So I think one of the challenges is for the I think it would be the stakeholder management part, because somehow from very frequently I will receive different requirements from stakeholders in our company, like the e-commerce team, the marketing team, for example, and so they will come to you directly and talk to you that I want this. So actually, they are actually proposing directly a solution instead of a problem-facing questions. So as I mentioned, for the product manager's responsibility is to maximize the value of the product. So somehow, the requirement from the stakeholder are not actually favoring towards the users or towards the customers, but actually they want to achieve some short-term business goal. So they come to you directly and to ask for a solution. And I think somehow for me the struggle part is I don't know how to reject them. So I think this is also the most frustration part, because when they come to you, so they have a strong needs on something, but actually, for me, I don't know how to say no to them, how to reject their requirement. But somehow, throughout the process, I will try to kind of reject them by questions. So basically, I will ask them a lot of why. So actually, to understand the objective behind their requirements. So I will clarify a lot with them on for example, on why they want to do this, why we want to achieve this goal, and is there any other solution that can help that do not involve any technical implementation, or somehow there is actually some workaround solution that can actually help them to achieve the goal or what they want. So um, yeah, so that's why I keep asking questions to them, so they can actually get self-reflection, and they will know actually it's not very important to do this in at this moment. Maybe I actually have some bigger goal in order to achieve, and at the same time you will also promote the product goal and to let them know what you are going to achieve in the future and what is the biggest good for the company and for the website and for our users at the end. So I think right now somehow this struggles has gone, but I think most of the product manager will also face the same situation or some this kind of topics. So I advise you to keep asking why and to clarify the objective with them, so that they will get self-reflection and they will think of any other solutions. And yeah, and Hussein, do you have any struggles in your daily work or from
Um,
your experience?
yeah, I think so. For me, as a UX designer, I work with different product managers or product owners at the same time. So I work with Wendy, and along with Wendy, I have two more product owners that I closely work with. So it becomes difficult to prioritize things because whenever different teams come to you with different requirements, and right now I think for a lot of people out there, not just in my team, but otherwise, if you go on a broader scope, a lot of teams want to have like different like workshop facilitations and different kind of design thinking workshops. And I think slowly and gradually and this whole methodology is being exploited. So how do you control your time, and how do you utilize your time in the most effective manner? At the same time, how do you come up with a solution for like in a lean manner. So whenever you any of the stakeholders coming to you that okay, I want to build this thing, and or I want to design this thing, you have to think about like what is the lean solution to that, which might not require a lot of like efforts from your end as well. Yeah, so for me, like that helps. First, I try to help them understand if there could be a lean solution, and secondly, like for them to think about what is the objective behind it, and what are the other ways through which we can achieve that goal as well. Yeah.
So we actually,
Um, yeah.
and Hussein, we actually have some like common field. So as a UX and the product manager, we actually want to help the stakeholders as well as the product team and our product to define why and what. So basically, it's about the objective and what kind of solution, no, what kind of problem or user needs that we are actually helping to define and for our users. And for the whole product team, which we also involve the UX designer, the developers into define how. So basically, we will define the solution within the product team, but not from the stakeholders. So the stakeholders somehow will come to you and say how, like, how about this? So actually, they are proposing some solution. But from our job is helping to help them to define why and what. But for how is actually like keep it inside the product team itself.
Yes, for sure. But at the same time, we would really want to hear from you guys. What do you think are the possible challenges for you all? We have it on Slido, so feel free to share what challenges do you face as a UX as a UX designer collaborating with PM and vice versa. All right, we have communication and we have unclear vision and goal. What else do we have? Are there any other challenges you face? Scope creep. I'm not too sure what that is.
Challenging requirements.
Yeah. Changing requirements.
Changing requirements.
Yeah, I think I remember like when I used to work towards like the agency side, like the client's scope used to keep evolving with time. So like it's like yeah, I think that's one of the issues I face as a designer in working in agency format. Yeah. Do we have any other challenges that people face?
I think we also face some changing requirements in the past. For example, like from the one mistake that we made is actually we share the design with the stakeholder in advance. So it's actually not the mistake, but actually we could do better in the workflow. So somehow we send out an email to our stakeholders to say this is the design that we would do the implementation. And then we receive a very long list of changing requirements. Like I want to change this. I want this button to be placed on left instead of right. We want to change this text into bolder size and larger font size, for example. So blah, blah, blah. So it's a very long list of emails. So then we actually do like a catch-up session with the stakeholders saying that actually we want to keep this design in for our product team. So actually we want to define on how on our own, because you need to trust our professionalism. You need to trust our like knowledge from the product team, for example. So that's why we do a retrospective, and then in the upcoming stage, we only do the idea validation through A/B testing or multivariation testing. So those idea and actually those solution has been proven by data and by our users, instead of pointing out by the stakeholders. So I think you can also try to keep everything into like an idea validation phase so that you won't have much changing requirement, because somehow what Hussein mentioned is also the lean process. So like the shorter lead time, the better. So if you keep changing the requirement and you will keep changing the implementation, and it will take a very long time to market and to launch to the users. So that's why keep the lead time short, do idea validation more frequently, and reduce the changing requirements.
Yeah, we also have one of them which says the product manager does not understand UX. So I'm glad that I have Wendy with me who does understand UX. We have like some one more regarding prioritization. So Wendy, what are your thoughts about prioritization? How do you think you do prioritization for the work that you do here, and for all the feature requests or all the enhancements that you worked on?
Yeah, for the prioritization, I think we are among our product team. Actually, we are doing some value and effort prioritization. So somehow, for my side, I will understand the value of each of the solution or user stories. So that's why we will know by measurements how much value this user story will create. Mm-hmm. So somehow it can be monetary. For example, when we know that the objective of this user story is to boost the conversion rate, for example, then actually we can calculate the additional revenue that we can generate from this user story. And yeah, so somehow it also involves some usage or user behavior value. And so this is why Hussein can advise. And on the effort part, so we will do different backlog refinement with the developers team, with the development team, with the engineers. So they will shout out, this user story, the technical feasibility is high, medium, or low. Then I will understand from technical point of view how much effort they actually need to place on this user story. And by comparing the value and the efforts that we need, then we actually know what we are going to achieve in the short term. And for some user story that are in very high value, but at the same time very high effort, then we will try to split the user story in smaller pieces. So this is also what I mentioned, in order to reduce the time to market, and so we can test different functionalities frequently and faster. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I know in the markets there are a lot of framework for the product prioritization, but among our team we are using simple like value versus efforts matrix in order to get the prioritization.
Yeah, and how do you prioritize? Like, in terms of like you talk about the value versus effort. So do you think that this is based on like a customer-driven priorities, or is it like an executive-related priorities, or how do you define those priorities?
So for the priorities, actually, we will back up by data, so we will know that how users are actually suffering from the problem. For example, on the e-commerce website currently, we know for the product pages, for example, we know that users are actually scrolling up and down in order to discover the product information on mobile. But somehow we miss out some opportunity to allow the user to get faster access to the information. So that's why we implement a sticky navigation. So we will know that this problem has been there for a very long while and how users are actually suffering. So through different user feedback or some workshops with the users. So we know that how big the solution, how big the problem is. Then it also become a criteria for us to do the prioritization. So actually for the value, for the urgency, for the effort, and we'll take different criteria into account in order to have the prioritization in our backlog.
Yeah. And for the rest of you guys out there, how do you do your prioritization? We have a Slido poll with us. Yeah. How do you do your prioritization? Whether you're a UX designer or a researcher or a product manager, how do you do your priorities? Is it based on executives or the management priorities, or is it product management decides the priorities, or is it customer driven, like something you found out as an insight from the customer, or it's a mix of all?
Hussein pool seems to be locked. I think you have to unlock the pool.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on. Yep, sorry about that. All right, I don't know why I can't see the results in here, but I do see here on the side that product management decides priorities, and some of them said it's customer driven and mix of the above, which means that the product manager might have identified in some way. So I think it's also it's good that the product manager takes the call, but at the same time, you should be, as a UX designer, you should be able to challenge your product manager. What is making them think that this should be a priority? What is it based on? What kind of insights do they have in order to put the particular problem or a particular solution on a priority? So yeah, as a UX designer, I think you should have your own voice to ask them these kind of questions as well. Yeah. All right. And other than that, I think like these are like some of the challenges that we discussed. But at the same time, we do face, like time and again, we do face some overlapping part as well. Well, what do you think, Wendy? Do you think like there are like some parts that are overlapping for us?
Yes, actually, what I mentioned, like from some of the scope that for UX designer and product manager, there are actually some scope that is overlapping. For example, from the especially for the research part. So in order to identify different needs or the customer problem, actually the Hussein and I work together in order to define and to do the user research, and through different ways like workshops, interviews, feedback sessions, so that actually we work together in order to define the problem and the needs that the user wants to have. And yeah, so we will also work together on like delivering different user stories and experiments on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from my side, I think most of my time spent with Wendy on on the overlapping part is on the persona and the user research and the user journey mapping. That's where I think I spend most of my time. And for the wireframing, I think we don't have like too much of the overlapping, um, because I take care of of that domain, and for user stories. Wendy is the one who solely takes care of these kind of domains. We I and like the rest of the team, we are contributors towards that part. But yeah, and then we all run experiments together. So the experiments are based on some of the hypotheses that we have validated with the help of user research. So yeah, that's how we collaborate and overlap at the same time. For as a UX designer, my role, which I solely take a lead on, is more regarding like defining the architecture and the interaction and the responsiveness. But at the same time, also how do you move the rest of the team in a clear direction, give them a clarity on what do they want to achieve. Yeah. And this diagram I came across, which is by Melissa Perry, and she beautifully explains like how UX and PM can overlap at the same time collaborate with each other. Yeah, and yeah. Other than that, I think we might. I think like other than that, we also have like some of our own tips and tricks to increase our efficiency. Wendy, I have seen you as one of the most efficient product owners out there. What are your tips for people who want to accelerate their learning process?
So I have a few tips and tricks for the product managers here. So what is that about? First of all, is on the KPIs and OKR management. So what I keep mentioning is actually that the product goal itself. So with the product goal, actually you have a very high level of the OKR, and so you have to measure it frequency, so you know that at which level that you are currently achieving the product goal. And somehow you will also have different initiatives. So for example, in the idea validation. So of each of the idea validation, actually you define the KPI. So in terms of, for example, the usage of the idea or some business value behind the idea. So basically, for most of the mistake of the product manager is that for the idea validation part, they actually didn't define the objective of the idea, and they actually didn't define the expected key result of the idea. For example, when you launch some testing, you don't know what you are going to achieve and how you are going to measure the result. So somehow it also become like some wasted efforts from the product team, because once the test is end, but somehow you don't know how to measure the result. So for the idea validation part, at the very beginning, you have to better define the objective and the expected measurements, like how do you want to achieve, what kind of matrix that you want to measure, and what is the expected number that is measurable. So then once you do the idea validation, then you will know the results, and you will know the uplift in terms of the performance. And after that, you will know that how one big step that you can actually working towards the product goal. So for the OKR management and the idea validation, you need to better define the KPIs. You need to better define the objective. And yeah. And for Hussein, do you have any tips and tricks for the UX designer here?
Yeah, for a UX designer, I think the key in order to progress is collaboration with different key stakeholders, and like having a clarity with the product manager. What do they expect out of you? How can you better support their goals? And at the same time, having the collaboration with the developers as well to understand how can you make the process seamless, because your job is not just to do the handoff, but also at the same time your job is to make sure that it's easier for them to understand your designs, your solutions. At the same time, they tell you about the technical feasibility of things as well. So that is also very important at the same time. Other than that, there are like some tools that I love using for collaboration. So one of them being Figma and the second one being Miro. which I think Miro or Mural, whichever you prefer. But these whiteboarding tools actually help a lot in order to clarify, some of the ideas and to further consolidate some of the solutions that you are working on. Yeah.
Hussein, I have a question for you. So for your design, somehow do you think it is uh, necessary to have a hi-fi design for the developers?
I think, well, first of all, like it depends. What is the scope of that design, or what is the scope of that solution? So let's say if it's like something which has to do more on the processes and like the backend structure and everything like that, then first thing I would do is like giving them a clear architecture of what we're building. Then, according to the feedback and that I have gathered, then I will further move down to the high fidelity design. Not in my day-to-day basis, like I don't necessarily create a high fidelity design for every solution. Um, low fidelity design for every solution. I see what is the necessity of either of them, and then according to that, I build my designs. But yes, it depends on the severity of the task or complexity of the task. If we know that even in terms of interaction, we need to show like some backend architecture to the engineering team, then we have to clarify that in terms of defining the user flows. Yeah. Yeah. So those are some of my tips and tricks as well. Yeah, I think we have covered most of the things from our agenda. How about we move down to Q&A?
Yeah.
There are like some really interesting question and answers. We have 7 minutes left, so we'll try to cover as much as possible. Yep. All right. I'll share my screen again. Yep. So the first question is, what do you wish you knew at the start of your UX career about working with a product owner? Any advice for a newbie designer? I think when I started working as a UX designer, in my first role, I did not even have a product manager to work with. In my second role, I had a product manager, and at that time. I think one of the things which would have made the process easier for me is to be involved in when they were defining the context, or if when you're working on a solution, you need to know what is the context behind it. Instead of the product manager just coming to you telling you what to do, you need to ask them why does it need to work, and what is the reason behind it. And thirdly, you need to ask them what is the complexity of this task as well, and what value is it bringing to the user. So you need to question them about any of the ideas that they're proposing. So I usually evaluate any request on two levels. So the first one is what business value is it driving, which can be turnover driven, etc. And the second one is what customer value is it driving? How is it improving the user experience for a customer? What kind of ease will it bring to them, etc. So these are the two of the questions that you should always ask a product owner. Why are they thinking about it? How can they back it by data? And even while doing that, like how relevant would it be for them to use? Because a lot of times in my experience while also considering the data, the solution might not work. So you need to empathize with the users, not just blindly trust the data, but empathize with the users, which is basically talk to them and see how they like to use a particular technology or a particular solution, and then according to that take the next step of building the solution. Yeah. And second question we have is, how do you ensure product decisions are based on user data, or how do you balance this with business goals and other stakeholders? Wendy, I think this one is more for you.
Yeah, I think we also have a similar discussion around this. So in terms of the product decision, how to use the user data. So for every analysis, so you would do, for example, you would do some data analysis, which is quantitative. For example, from Google Analytics, you will know how users are actually interacting with those features, or how the features is actually driving towards some objective like conversion or awareness or some user behavior. And so that's why for each of the user needs or a user problem, actually it can be proved by data. So try to use as much as tools like the heat map, the scroll depth, or you don't have, then you just do some like user interview or some feedback from the users to collect some feedback from users. So actually those decisions or those ideas can actually be proven by the user data. And for the stakeholder pressure, I think what you need to do is what I also discuss is also like to have the clarity from the stakeholders for every requirement that they propose. Then you just have a lot of questions and questionings to them, so you have the clarity from them, and you will know better the objective, and you will know better the why and the what, so that there actually can be some other solution that can help the stakeholders or can actually resolve the same objectives. So that's why on the stakeholder part, you might need to keep questioning them and to have a clarity on them, so you can think outside of the box and try to push them back when they propose some solution but not the problem. And so that's why it also help that you won't be driving out from the business goal, but you can still work in parallel for some features or user story towards the business goal. But at the same time, you can manage your stakeholders and you can help them to do what they want.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So we have the next question, which is, what are the biggest and most common struggles between UX designer and product owners? Okay, I can share mine. I think some of the key struggles is when the data is not properly validated, and then we're directly jumping on the solution. I think it happens with different things. Like we jump onto the experimentation phase very quick without even validating or researching about a particular problem. So let's say in a scenario when the product team is just like asking you to build the design, and like they want to like quickly run the experiment so that they can validate that assumption. I think that's a completely wrong approach, and it seems like a very easy way of like testing out a solution, but actually it's the most expensive way, because you're spending your money on it, like while running A/B tests, you're using your resources, and you're using your time as well. So you need to make sure like you have a like a properly validated data in order to build solution. And yeah, I think that's for me as a UX designer, that's one of the challenges I run into while working with programmers. How about you, Wendy?
So for me, it's also on the stakeholder management part, to get the clarity and to get the objective. So yeah, I also agree with you that somehow we shouldn't jump into the experiment or the solution directly. Otherwise, it will be wasting the time of the whole product team into like to have the implementation while it hasn't been validated or it hasn't been researched it, so that somehow the problems or the user need might not exist or is not valid in the reality.
All right. Yeah, awesome. Um, some other questions which are there after this one is, what do product owners expect from designers they work with, and vice versa? So, what do you expect from designers, Wendy?
So from designers, their role is also on the discovery and the design parts. So for example, the UX designer jobs is not only scope into the design, but also like the discovery, like the user research, different kind of interviews, so that it could draw different insights from the users. And at the same time, once we define the problems, then we will have some solution, and we will work closely with the UX designer into finding the designs.
Yeah.
And what about you, Hussein?
For me, like I think I expect product owners to have a like a clear objective about what do they want to work on and
Yeah.
what kind of value can it bring to the overall product. So yeah, I think it's mainly based on that. So that's what I expect from product owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we will take one last question.
Shall
Um,
we? It's
yeah.
already 31.
All right. We can just quickly see what one more question and then we can wrap
Yeah.
up. Any suggestion for a UX designer to shift to product management?
Mm,
Um,
good one.
from my side, I think I would say like have like keep practicing on the user research part. Try to have a clarity on how user research is run in different organizations, and while at the same time, data is the key thing. So how well do you study the data and how do you draw insights from them? That's very important for product owner. Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Wendy?
Yeah, I think it also ties to like how you define the product vision and the product goal. So once you have a better clarity on the users on your product, then actually you can create different personas and different user needs on the product, and then you will also have a better clarity on the product goal and the product vision. So it is also key to for the UX designer to move into the PM field.
Awesome, great. Yeah, we do have some other questions, but sorry, we have run out of time. But feel free to reach out to us, to any of us over LinkedIn, and we can definitely try to answer you guys to the best of our abilities. But before we leave, well, I know like most of the people have left already, but let's take a quick picture to showcase that we all made it to this session. For us, it's like early in the morning before our work starts. So yeah, let's do that. If it'll be great if you guys can quickly switch on your cameras. Awesome. Do we have more people? All right. All right. Don't
So
be shy, guys. Come on. Great. Good stuff. We have some people planning from the office as well.
hi, Amy.
All right. Quickly, guys. We'll start taking the picture now. So maybe you guys can, the leftover people can quickly switch on their cameras. Yeah. All right. Won't force anyone, but yeah, awesome. Great.
Say 1, 2,
Okay.
3,
All right, guys.
cheese.
1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. Awesome.
Thank
I'll
you.
send the post-session notes and recording for you guys to take a look at. Feel free to reach out to me via ADPList or LinkedIn, or for Wendy. She's not on ADPList. We need to convince her to join ADPList. But yeah, feel free to reach out to her on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's session and hope to see you in the future.
For sure. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a
Thank
great day
you.
or great evening
Have a
ahead.
good
See you.
day or evening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.